Do we want headaches at this level or this level or this level?
Yeah, I'm just fully, there's never anything that's going to go wrong.
It's the opposite of how I usually am, where I'm like,
the majority of the roofs are new now. You're listening to the Roofing Success Podcast, a show created to inspire roofing contractors to achieve optimal success in their roofing businesses. I'm the host, Jim Aline, the co-author of the books Internet Marketing for Roofing Contractors and The Best Known Roofer. I'm also the co-founder of Roofer Marketers, the leading digital marketing agency for the roofing industry. On each episode, I sit down with industry leaders to talk about their processes, the lessons they've learned, and how to find success in roofing. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. As always, like, share, comment, subscribe, do all those things. If you want to continue the conversation beyond what you're just listening here, to go to Facebook, type in Roofing Success, and join the Roofing Success Facebook group. Today, we got George Boudreaux, Louisiana, in the house. How are you today, man?
I'm good, brother. Good to be with you.
Good. So Pelican Roofing, Lafayette, Louisiana. Man, you guys have had a couple of storms over the years. How did you get into roofing?
We have. We've had some big ones, man. In fact, when I started the company in 2014, I was thinking we're really due for a hurricane. It had been, 5-6 years since there had been anything meaningful, and even longer since we had a large storm. And then it wasn't until 2020 till we really got something again. So we went on a bit of a drought, if you will. But yeah, in 2020 we had Hurricane Laura, and then a few weeks later Hurricane Delta, category 4 or 5, and a 3 to 4, and then a year later Hurricane Ida, all within basically an hour and a half or so of our home base here in Lafayette. So it was crazy. But I got involved in roofing in 2014. I was flipping houses prior to that. So I finished college in 2001-ish, and did a bunch of different things. I taught school. I tried to sell insurance. Worked as a petroleum landman for a while, and then over dinner one night with my wife's family, her uncle said, "Hey, look, if you ever want to flip a house or something, I've got a line of credit. We can do something together." And I had watched a few friends do this, and I was really looking for an exit out of working for someone. I was really not a great employee, didn't work very hard, wasn't enjoying what I was doing, and thought maybe I was kind of lazy, but I just hadn't found anything I was interested in.
Yeah.
And so I immediately quit my job, found a flip, and then quit my job and started working on it, swinging the hammer, YouTubing how to build a pier and beam foundation, and did all of the work and messed everything up. Of course, my first time, still made a little bit of money, and figured if I could do this again with a few less mistakes, I might have something. So I continued to do that, and I flipped houses for about 5 years, grew that business, and I had done maybe 40 or so flips by 2014, had acquired 15 rental properties. I was wholesaling houses and went out to Houston and really got my butt kicked in that market in the flip game, had a contractor roll out with some money on like 4 flips. Had very high holding costs of about $15,000 a month during that time. And the thing was falling apart, and it took a while to get it all back together. Very painful experience. And as I was going through that, I had debt to my private investors who had funded deals for me. And I knew I needed to pay them back, but everything was so skinny, flipping houses. I was using all the profit from that to pay these guys back on the debt that I was owed, and made the decision at that time, I need to start looking for something else to generate some revenue. I couldn't find enough flips to support what I needed. And the year prior, I'm flipping houses and I'm seeing the market. I'm looking at what roofers are charging. I'm looking at how most of them aren't showing up on time, providing good service. Our market seemed really soft to me. So I was actually very scared to get into it. Truth be told, I was intimidated by what I didn't know, because I didn't really know roofing. And it's risky work and it's dangerous work. And it's not like going in to change light bulbs or mess with sheetrock. We got thousands of pounds of debris falling off roofs. And so I was very intimidated, and that prevented me from starting for a while. And I had a real estate mentor who was very influential, a guy out of Phoenix. And through that mentorship, he really instilled some courage in me. And I decided I'm going to give this thing a shot. And so I opened up the company and used my real estate network to kind of get going with some repairs and small roof replacements. And then, grew it from there.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny how things come out of necessity. We have a lot of similarities in our background. I was doing flips through that time period too, and
oh, wow.
One of the things that I did during that time period is I wanted to understand. I GC'd all my own jobs and did a lot of the work and stuff, and so like on every house that I did, at least in the beginning, I learned one of the trades. Right. Like it was like, okay, on this one, I'm doing drywall because I wanted to understand what went into it and how it was bid and what I was paying for and and so, I went through that process and never did a lot of roofs on the flips that I was doing. Right. It's not something that comes up as often. You're doing more interior remodeling work. So I could see that being you don't get to see that as much. Right. But also I see that, man, that was when the market turned. Like there was a big shift in the market there, 13, 14, where a lot of the institutional investors had come in and started really putting, hundreds of millions to billions of dollars in acquiring residential real estate. And it became tough for the smaller, flipper to minimize their risk. Risk was minimized by large spreads, right? And 70% of ARV. I'm sure you remember those numbers, right?
Oh yeah.
And then all of a sudden it started shrinking.
Like 80%, I got to buy it at 80% of ARV. Yeah,
that's right, and hope for appreciation on the other end. So, you have to make those shifts in the marketplace. That's it's challenging in real estate, but economically, there's a lot of challenges too, right? With all businesses, but I think, and what you've probably found in roofing is it's more level, right, than a real estate career. And so, got through that, started using your real estate network to kind of get yourself out there. What was that? What was the scale up process then through that?
Yeah, so we did probably $500,000 our first year. A lot of repairs and a few small re-roofs, no commercial. And then I think the next year we were probably at about $1.5 million. The real estate network is really what helped me a lot, and I really leaned on realtors. I marketed myself as the realtor's roofer for a while there, and I was emailing every realtor, and that helped a lot. And we just did a real good job early on of answering the phone right away, doing exactly what we said, those small things. And that's what I saw was lacking and was encouraging me to get into the business. I was like, we can pick up a phone every time it rings and do the simple stuff. And so that really propelled us for our early growth. But we got stuck around 2.5 million, and we stayed there for a couple years or so. We were only doing retail work. I was still very, very limited in my mindset as to the potential of the company and where I could go in it. And so I wasn't thinking really big, and I was growing really slow. I think we did 2.8 million. It must have been somewhere around 2017. And we brought in a sales manager who had been in the industry for about a decade, coming out of Dallas. I happened to cross paths with this guy on a flight from the IRE. he was working for one of our competitors in the market. Our flights got canceled. And so we had to take a ride home, and we shared a vehicle. And on the way home, this guy's real quiet, and he's kind of just listening to me and the other owner talk. And I thought, all right, this guy's smart. This other owner's asking me a lot of questions about my business.
Yeah.
Pretty intrusive. This other guy's being real quiet. I was curious about him. It didn't work out between those two guys. And before he left to go back to Dallas or whatever, he called me up, said, "Hey, you happen to be hiring?" I said, "Well, let's talk." And so he brought in all of the knowledge of the storm restoration side. Immediately, contracts started coming in, and I thought something might have been wrong or unethical. I didn't know what was going on because they were just pouring in. They knew how to knock doors, close deals, and all of that. And so that opened up kind of the next level of growth for us. So we did 5 million, and then the next year we were on track for probably 8 or 9. And that was all in our little market here in Lafayette of 150,000 people or so. And then the storms started. 2020 came, we got a little hailstorm, and then the hurricanes came, and then we shot up. We ended up at 10 million or so that year, and then 20 million the next year. And then last year, scaled down to about 12 million after the storms. And that's kind of where we're sitting right now. Somewhere we'll probably do a little north of that this year.
So that's interesting that you said you were limited in mindset, right? And it's that we don't know what we don't know kind of thing, right? Like,
yeah.
and then the one piece of the puzzle comes into play, which was that sales manager for you, which was kind of a serendipitous thing that happened, right? Like just a bad flight from the IRE gets canceled, and you're, and then it's like, oh, wow, this is different. Like there's this now. I mean, I guess coming from your background, it didn't sound like you had a lot of sales background, like sales, right? So like real estate is sales, but it's, you put it on the MLS and you kind of wait for people to want, make offers, and it's not as salesy, right? Like,
not at all.
So adding that, it sounds like you just maybe didn't know that you needed that sales component. Am I on track with that, with your mindset at the time, or what was going on?
100%. I mean, there was two things missing. One was the knowledge of the insurance process. I was advising other realtors to replace their roof on a retail basis, and it actually had, I didn't know at the time, but it had storm damage. I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
This guy comes in and I'm like, wait, insurance pays? They'll actually pay for that? And then I realized like they're paying for most of the roofs in the area because they have legitimate damage. So I didn't know that. And I also did not know much about sales. And this guy was very good at just knocking the door, very simple process, asking the right questions, not talking too much, getting a contract signed, moving it through the process. So learned a whole lot from him. I owe a lot of our growth at that time to this guy, but we continue to learn that same lesson around sales today. And we're in the process now, which we can, discuss this if you'd like, moving from just hiring a bunch of good people that take care of the customer as a sales division to a very defined and regimented step-by-step process, script, asking for the sale, refining the customer journey to have a bunch more touches. And so we're undergoing a new level. I think in a year's time, we're operating as one of the elites in the country in terms of a sales division by the time we're done with this process.
Yeah.
But our close rates have been 25% on average on the retail side. If it wasn't me selling or, and I know we should be 35 or 40 with the reputation we have, the reviews we have, all of that. So we're learning that lesson again. And I think that lesson is a huge one. I'm becoming obsessed with sales lately as a result of me understanding the upside and how powerful it is and how much of a driver and a nucleus it is to an organization, especially if we want to go back to 20 and then up to 30 million or whatever.
Yeah.
So Those are
duplicatable processes, right? In a consistent sales process. You got to have that.
yeah.
Yeah. But there's always iterations. This is what I love about business is it's just iterations.
Yeah.
A lot of times you think when I get here, this is it. I made it. Everything's good. We're good. But that's not the way it goes. Like there's just always another iteration that you can make to refine and improve. And that's kind of the fun of it in my mind.
Journey. That's the journey. That's the never ending process. There's a new devil at every level, as they say. And, there is no end. I think the acceptance of that is enormous for peace of mind to know that I had a guy sit in front of me he was an employee, he was a roofer, and he was telling me a few years ago how I was telling him he needed to correct some things and wasn't sure if he was going to work out. And he was stressing because he was, well, if I lose my job, this and that, you don't understand. You've already made it. And I was like, I thought that was so interesting that he thought I made it. But what he didn't realize is I've got all these other headaches and things to deal with. And so the acceptance of that is huge. That's something that I work on personally. And I have to remind myself of all the time. Like, the headaches don't go away. We just choose them. We just choose which ones. Do we want headaches at this level or this level or this level? New lessons. So yeah, but you were talking about mindset, and in my journey, that's probably the biggest impediment to change, as well as catalyst for growth. Once right before that sales manager came into my path, I had a little something click. I wasn't working out regularly physically, and I was upset about that. I was like, I was kind of an athlete in high school, and I was just like, man, I'm just not doing a whole lot. And I read a book by Tim Ferriss, 4 Hour Body, got inspired. I was like, if I can't spend 5 minutes a day, 3 times a week doing something, then I really don't give a shit about my health. So I started doing that. When I got into my gym at my house, I started watching Impact Theory, Tom Bilyeu's show. This is 2018. And I watched like 3 or 4 in a row, and I saw this common thread among several individuals from different backgrounds, some business, some athletics. But it was the same thing, and it was around mindset and repetition and habit. And so I started making a few changes, and the strangest things started happening like almost right away. These serendipitous moments. I started like winning some competitions randomly, and like all this weird. And this dude comes in my path, and the business just shot up. And I don't understand it any other way than there was some energetic force or something. I know this stuff sounds woo-woo to a lot of people, but I'm so convinced of it that I continue to put myself in a situation every morning to set my day up for that probability being at its greatest, for more of those things to happen. And it's hard. The last 2-3 years, COVID punched me in the face pretty good. I got really obsessed with everything going on and trying to figure things out, and affected my demeanor and disposition. And so I've had to circle back and put myself there again every single morning, make sure I have the right habits so that I'm set up to receive those things that come in our path that can help us. And I think I've had some resistance the last few years on some of those. So if I'm talking to my kids or anyone who's asking me for advice, like that's what I want to talk about. Like we have to get ourselves in a position to receive those serendipitous opportunities.
For sure. I had there was a moment in my life where I graduated college early 2000s also, and I had a degree in management of information systems. I'm doing programming, server-side programming, and building web applications. And I got hired. It was right after the .com crash. So It was like, there's no, like, this industry is like decimated. Right. And one of my professors owned a company and hired me to work in his company. And I was at an event at the time, and I was talking to someone, and they said, and I was telling them, man, I'm so lucky. My professor hired me, and I was able to, get started in this career. And the guy stopped me in the middle of my story, and he said, sometimes you create your own luck. And I went, and that one just has stuck with me forever. And it sounds like, and I know so many people that have done this too. And it is that common thread in the Tom Bilyeu stuff, right? Like, it's consistency is one of the things. And I actually have a friend down in Lafayette right now. We were talking the other day. And he said that's what he went back and focused on. He said, I'm not focusing on my business right now. I'm going to go back and focus on myself.
Yeah.
He's focusing on his, health and wellness, and focusing on his family, and focusing on these things. And he said he already has seen like things happening in business that are more right. It's a weird thing, but it's the consistency there's a quote, something like, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything.
Yeah.
Right. Something like that. Right. And so when you start doing things consistently and moving yourself in the right direction, exercising, reading, doing these things, like just taking these little baby steps, all of a sudden the things other things start to align.
Absolutely.
Right. And
it's all connected.
It's all connected. It's so crazy. So like you'd said, going back to fitness for yourself, I guess, listening to or watching, kind of inspiring, motivational stories and information. What else have you done that has kept you on that journey?
Those are really the big things.
Yeah.
Those are the big things. I take in probably an hour a day of information, and it's typically while I'm working out in the morning. And sometimes it's a little more business related, and it's X's and O's. A lot of times, though, I know when I need something. I wake up and maybe I don't want to work out, or I'm just kind of. A lot of times, I just want to jump right into the work because I feel like there's so much to do that I don't have time to even do that. And I often recall a quote by, there's two of them I think about. One of them was, I think, attributed to Abraham Lincoln, or maybe it was Washington. I don't know. For me, it doesn't matter. If I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first 4 sharpening my axe.
Yeah. And
then the other one was Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King Jr., but the founder of Lutheranism, said, I'm so busy, I don't have time not to pray this morning, was his thing. And so that's kind of a form of prayer for me, if you will, is just getting connected in. So I'll go into that 6:45 a.m. I'll go into that with a certain mindset of overwhelm, anxiety. There's so much to do, so many problems to solve today. Put myself in that situation. I leave inspired and energized. In 30 minutes to an hour, I'm ready to go. And then I can come into the office and I can lead. I can have positive energy and not drag people down, but lift people up. So that's the big one is those two things are connected. The movement of the body, because we know that changes our chemicals, our biology, and then constantly being inspired. I'm not a naturally optimistic and happy go lucky guy. I'm just not. So I have to do that. It's the only way I know to do it.
I've been cursed with optimism. I'm just fully. There's never anything that's going to go wrong.
That's awesome.
It's I just always see that like everything will work out. Like I've just always had that in me. No, everything will work out. And not that there aren't days where you're like, this might not work out, but like I've always been able to really channel that, which is very, very helpful.
That's awesome.
So let's go back to the business scaling for a little bit, because now these, you start getting the storm work, you're building up, and now these hurricanes hit.
Yeah.
And now, the demand increases tremendously and very, very quickly.
Yeah.
How did you manage that scale and what did you break? doing so?
Gosh, man, what didn't we break? Yeah. So yeah, is literally within, you've got a day or two prior to the storm hitting where it's about to come, but you're not sure that storm can still jog 30 miles and dramatically change what happens to the market, whether it's more rural or urban affected. So you've got a day or so, and then the calls start coming in. So on top of it being its own struggle, our phones went out and internet's not working, and we're having to navigate that literally the first day when all of the sun rises and everyone's assessing damage. We had a good amount of employees in place that allowed us to take all of these calls. Mm. So we were able to do decent on the intake every day. Looked, the first few days, it's 3 or 4 individuals just taking calls all day, inputting leads into a system, into AccuLinks. And then if there's a break, it's returning voicemails. And at the end of the day, there's 20 or 30 voicemails to return. And then the next day you do the same thing, and now there's like 60 voicemails to return. So pretty nuts. We weren't sure how we were going to go from doing, say, 3 roofs a day to 6 to 8 roofs a day. And we weren't sure how we were going to assess all of these roofs. Mm. And so we made some quick modifications with using some reports and spitballing some quotes to people. We left a lot on the table, I'm sure, but one of the biggest mistakes that I made was I didn't want to be caught in a position where we couldn't handle the work. And so I erred on the side of, let's just buy anything we need. So we started buying a bunch of shingles by the truckload, getting them shipped in. We bought a truck, like a delivery truck, like we were going to be a distributor overnight, and a piggyback, like a forklift. Yeah. And so the net result of that at the end was we were left with, 8 squares of 20 different colors and all this capping and, 30 or 40 grand worth of stuff that we couldn't use and had to donate. And we never even used the truck because we got sold a lemon from some dealer up north. And then by the time it came down, we couldn't use it. It was a mess. There was a lot of moving parts. What I'm proud of is that we were able to maintain our reputation and our reviews and all of that. There were things that came up. You have people that are very stressed out and they're upset with us for not getting to them for 6 weeks or whatever. But at scale, we did a very good job on the production side and on the sales side. But we were only a month into this whole process when the second storm came. And when that happened, our sales guys had already said, don't send me any more leads. I can't handle anything else. We probably had 5 sales guys at that time. And so I was like, man, we had actually traveled up to see Dustin Beegler and Marcus in Apple Roofing. They had previously agreed to meet with us prior to these storms coming. And so myself and 3 managers traveled up there, and we're there, and we're seeing this other storm come in the Gulf, and we're like, this one's hitting even closer to home. Are we just going to turn the phones off? Do we not take advantage of a storm hitting in our backyard or what? And so at that point, we were driving down a highway somewhere in Nebraska, and I said, all right, here's our thought experiment, guys. Let's wipe the slate clean, blank canvas. Let's approach this and reverse engineer it and think about how can we still do work, generate contracts coming in, and do no work. How can we do this without actually working for it? And I nicknamed them in that conversation. I said, we're going to call them couch potato contracts. How can we get contracts without working for it? What's the easiest path here? And so by the end of that hour-long discussion, we had a framework and a structure laid out, a hypothesis to take advantage of that work. And essentially what we did was as soon as the calls came in, they were directed to our website digitally. Then an automated message got sent to them, a video explaining what was going to happen. Here's the contract. Here's how you get on the schedule, and here's what you have to do. And to our surprise, a lot of those converted. Millions of dollars worth of work converted from that. So we didn't go to these houses. There's so much demand, right, that people are buying. So they just signed the contract saying that if it gets approved, the service agreement, if it gets approved, we'll hire you to do the work. And we sent out other inspectors, not our sales guys, to get counts on things and assess the conditions. So our production side was set up to do the job. And so we had a few $1 million worth of contracts come in from that. And it was all automated and almost took no effort on our side. It probably took 8 hours to build the system. And then it was done. It was one of the things I'm most proud of. And we'll use that if we ever have another storm. It would be easy to do that in another market too. I've been careful to share the specifics of it. I shared a little bit with Marcus after the storm that came a year after that, because they were so gracious in helping us out there. But so that's something that went right. But what went wrong is we spent a whole lot of money that we didn't need to. I added in layers of management and people, and this is day by day. Our systems are getting taxed. We're reinventing ways to measure things and do things. And also one of the tough things was the hangover from this storm, because all of our sales guys were literally getting contracts dropped on their desk daily. Like, here's 3 more contracts, and you're going to get your 7% commission on the gross sale, and you don't have to go out to the house. We just need someone to communicate with the customer and explain to them the process. You can imagine how this ended, right? So they did well. Our guys made a lot of money.
Yeah.
They worked their tail off too. Don't get me wrong. They earned it. But what do you do when that dries up and you got to go start knocking doors again? That's difficult.
That's difficult, right? That's when you have major storms like you guys had, man, you definitely had to figure out a way to maximize your opportunity, right, in that. But boy, all of a sudden, you created some soft salespeople.
Yes, yeah, man.
Because it was too easy, right? It was too easy for a little bit,
way too easy. And then whenever, I had Chris Anderson from SRS. Where he sold his companies to SRS a few years ago, and he told me right around the early part of that storm that he said, usually there's a big vacuum that occurs. That's as soon as that work is done, everything gets sucked out of the market, and it's very difficult. And I wish I would have asked him more questions about how to position myself and navigate through that at the time. But that's what we found to be the case. They're very difficult to get new work. And so what we had to do is I had to start applying more pressure. These guys, they didn't want to go knock doors. And I had to start applying. And as soon as that pressure comes, it's not comfortable, right? And it's very hard to go back at that point. It's like giving someone a raise and then telling them, okay, I need to cut your salary by 30%. I want you to do all the same stuff. It just doesn't. That stuff doesn't work.
Or do more now.
Yeah.
Really, right?
Yeah. So it really changed things. And so we cycled through it. We had a good bit of turnover in that sales environment. As I started putting the pressure and the environment starting to change, guys are like, oh no, are there any roofs left? Am I going to be able to earn any commissions? So we had a good bit of churn at that time. And now we're in this kind of new phase where we're implementing this new sales process on the retail side, but also these guys are charged with prospecting.
Yeah, because that's a big issue in your marketplace. The majority of the roofs are new now.
Yeah.
Right. So what the consistency of people needing a new roof is not okay. Well, this part of town is now 20 years old, so they're gonna it's not that normal cycle. And so let's talk a little bit about how now so some of the salespeople didn't make it, just decided it wasn't the right fit for them at that point in time. How has it been, scaling down? What were some of the decisions that you had to make there, and what have you learned in being ready to capture the next one if it happens, when it happens?
Scaling down was incredibly difficult. I've told my team on multiple occasions, I never want to let anyone go because it's slow. I don't want to be the guy that does that. We see that happen in the oil field, and people go through a roller coaster of a career in South Louisiana. And so we don't want to do that. We want to hunt for work as hard as we can to keep you. And it got to the point where I wasn't able to do that with a few individuals. And so I had to change some positions. I had to let go of a few people. Our salaries and all of the benefits associated with them is the large part of our overhead. So that was the first place to cut. But I also had to start, I went line item by line item last year. I mean, a ton of time down to, can we say $20 on this thing when our overhead was over $200,000 a month. And so we just cut everything that we possibly could. But the most difficult part was there was a threshold there where they made, in order for me to continue to cut, say, employees or other systems we're using, subscriptions, et cetera, the whole structure of the company would have had to change. And what would have had to happen is, my COO is now he's an operations manager and has to go back to doing all this other kind of stuff. As the CEO myself, I've got to take on a different role and start doing it. And it would have been so disruptive to the structure of the organization. And so I'm not sure it would even work. I don't know if we could have gone back as a company. So what it forced me to do is really hone in on marketing and sales to figure out how do necessity is the mother of invention. We have to invent a way to make this work. We have wonderful people. I'm not letting them go. I don't want to drop pay. What are we going to do? And so it just forced us into finding new ways. And so we're having to market in different ways. We're, as I mentioned, revamping our sales process. We have to grab market share now. It was easier to be slightly above average and do very, very, very well. Yeah. And now it doesn't work. So we have to grab market share from the guys that aren't returning the phone calls, are not consistent. That's the path that I see. And in the Lake Charles market, we had to just get out of that market. I stayed there way too long, and I forfeited a lot of money trying to make something work in a market where there's only 3 old roofs and 80,000 new ones. Lafayette, our home base, is not quite that bad. There's still some work here. And as we move east into our other market in Baton Rouge, there's even more opportunity. So it's a different thing for every market. Our marketing in these markets is all different. Our sales is different across these markets. Some there's a lot more prospecting, and some it's a little heavier retail. So it's not starting a new business, but man, it does feel like ground zero in a lot of ways, figuring new things out. But it's forcing us into greatness as a company.
Yeah. I think it's real challenging for companies that are very storm focused to shift the mindset into a retail focus from a marketing perspective, because all of a sudden, boy, you got to put some effort in. And that effort a lot of times comes in dollars.
That's right. oh yeah.
Right. And it's a different game, if you want to say it, right? So what are some of the changes that you had to make? I mean, I guess it was a mindset shift too. What type of marketing budgets did you have during the good storm years?
Oh man, we were during the storm extremely low, probably around 1% of revenue.
Yeah.
Maybe even less at times. There was one month right after the storm, we spent $20,000 on Facebook ads, and then we cut it off. And it was very, very good for us. The ROI was very strong on that, but it worked well just in that environment for a short period of time, and then it wasn't sustainable. But outside of that, we were at that 1% range, and then now I think this year we're probably, I'd have to do some quick calculations, but we'll probably be closer to the 5% this year.
Yeah,
and I'm trying to prepare myself to be able to actually do a little bit more to fuel some growth, but I'm slow to it because we love to measure this stuff in a very detailed fashion. And I've avoided a lot of marketing for years and years that I can't really measure very well. So we're trying out, we're doing some direct mail for the first time right now. And before we scale that up times 3 or 4, I want to see some of these results. We're doing more TV. We've always done pay-per-click, but we're doing a good bit more of it. Doing a little bit of social media stuff that hasn't changed a whole lot. Those are our main deals, but we're also placing a very large emphasis on networking and building relationships, and we're tasking our salespeople with doing that. We have time blocks on a weekly basis. They're blocked off in our conference room to do networking socially, LinkedIn, Facebook, Nextdoor. And they have instructions, do this, 1, 2, 3, share this, comment here, look for this post to comment on, So they're doing that. I just brought in a new sales manager, and he's on board with getting involved in the community a whole lot more than we've done in the past. We're doing some sponsorships. So we're throwing a lot of things out, but we're measuring them too.
Yeah.
And whatever works the best, we'll just spend more money on those things to fuel our growth.
Yeah. And it gets hard at a certain point, where there are things that are challenging to measure, especially when you're doing community stuff. Even television sometimes gets harder to measure, right? Like there's these things that get harder to measure, but you have to be moving. If you're seeing that going in the right direction, at least you can quantify it a little bit. But man, if you're talking about like 1% of 20 million, right? So 200,000 as a marketing budget to then 5% of, whatever the goal is. So, you're talking about $500,000 plus $700,000 in a marketing budget now. I think that's a mindset that is hard for contractors to accept.
It's still hard for me, and I know I've got to do it. It's still very difficult. It is a mindset thing, because in the past it was a scarcity mindset thing. I was very afraid to spend the money because I didn't want to waste it, and I was so scared I didn't even want to test it in some ways, and I wanted to look for the cheapest way to find those leads. But I've seen some guys ahead of where I'm at. I have a few guys I network with that are running operations that are 3, 5, 7 times what we are. And I see what they do. And they're sending their salespeople on 2, 3 appointments every day. Large sales staffs doing this, spending a lot of money. And so there's other dynamics that are in here. Part of the reason that's hard for me to do that is because our gross margins are smaller than they should be as well. So I'm having to inch those up. How do you do that? We have to be able to sell at a higher conversion rate, for one, to be able to afford the leads to supply those sales. So I'm still having a hard time, and I'm inching up. So right now I'm probably closer to 2.5% on my spend this month.
Yeah.
But I'm moving. Is whatever works, we'll keep doing it. So I think it's smart and it's cautious. And it's the opposite of how I usually am, where I'm like, I get a little information and I just jump in.
Yeah.
This one I'm like, because we've been just cutting costs. And now I'm like, okay, well, let's just start raising. You want the sales, you want to know the sales is coming to support it, to not present any issues there. So I don't have the answers. I'm just trying stuff.
No, but I think you're on the right track, especially in looking at it. So here's a weird thing is, to make your marketing perform better, sometimes you have to focus on your sales.
Yeah.
And we did an analysis of a company one time where they had 2 locations. One of their locations, they're like, we're not closing any of these leads from Facebook and Google ads and things like that. And so we go in and we look at all the data and it, like, in one of their locations, it was terrible. Like, it was like, wow, this is not performing well. In their other location, they had great conversion rates on it. It was different people.
Yeah.
Right. It was the sales rep that was better. That just was a better sales rep. They had better sales reps in this other office and it's like, man. And then, but that now allowed them to go, what are you guys doing?
Sure. Yeah.
That's the difference. Like, let's look at the differences between, the processes of these reps. And that, another thing is like, you guys, it sounds like, are really diligent on that answering the phone, right? Like, I think a lot of contractors, that's a place that they don't look for ROI.
Yeah.
Which blows my mind, because that's where so much of the ROI is in that initial appointment set, in that initial conversation that you have when they reach out to you via phone, via, form submission, via whatever it is, right? Like, however they find you, a Facebook ad, or calling you from TV, or they see someone at a community event, or they see a comment on a post on social media or something, like, all of that. Like, if that initial interaction isn't executed well, that's going to increase your need for more marketing dollars. It's going to decrease your ROI there.
Yeah.
Then you're looking at your sales reps, and I know a lot of good sales trainers that give the lay down leads. I was talking with Chuck Toki from Top Rep about this. He gives the lay down leads, the easy ones, to his best guys. And people are like, why would you do that? Don't give it to the guy that's not as good, because that'll be easier for him. It's like, no, because that guy's might screw it up. Like, there's all these little tweaks that you can make along the way to maximize that ROI out of that, because it gets scary when you're doing 8-figure revenue and you're having to invest, my goodness, that's a nice new house you're investing, like
40 grand a month. Yeah. Where we're moving to. Yeah.
Right.
Like, I think it's just not, it's easy to not focus on some of these small things, because it just doesn't seem like on the surface it's going to provide. It's too simple to answer the phone and increase lower your customer acquisition costs.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like that. That's just, so we're looking for like this novel new way to bring something in. And so we focus on that. But what we've been missing for a long time too is laying out the customer journey really well. So my in-house marketing guy and I sat down and we spent an hour about just reverse engineering it and bullet pointing, like, how do we want this whole thing to look? What's the most ideal scenario? And we gave ourselves 3 months to implement it. So every week he puts a little something else in the process. But the way that we're asking questions we changed some of the questions that we're asking. Now they get an automated email right after that appointment is set, and that has some information that warms them up a little bit. And then there's another email the next day with a little bit of information about us. And then there's a process, a more detailed process of sales and inspection there. And then there's a follow-up, and then another follow-up. If it's still in lead status, then it's one thing. And if it's marked dead, then we continue to market to them.
Yep.
Utilize that as an email campaign. And then we're probably adding 10 touches to the whole thing. And I know that's going to increase the conversion rate. I mean, you see all these statistics, like most sales don't close after 2 or 3 touches. It's 7 to 10, whatever. So that's something that you don't pay for that. It's not like here's my money, Google, and where's my lead.
That's
so it doesn't feel, but I know it intuitively that it works, because I've been around long enough to see, and I've seen it work on me as a customer too. I'll buy stuff after they bother me, and I hate bothering people, but I'll buy stuff after they bother me. a few times, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Talking with Chuck again, it was like they call one every hour and a half for like 5 days if they don't get a hold of it.
Cool.
Like every hour and a half they're calling like for 5 days until they get someone up, like until it's, and the way that it's a mindset shift, right? So instead of thinking I'm bothering this person, we're here to solve their problem, right? And so why wouldn't you diligently try to solve their problem? And that's part of it. Is maybe they, contacted you on your website or did something like that, and they, they're at work surfing the web, and they're not, they can't answer the phone now. And then they're going to picking up the kids from school, and then they're going and doing this, and they got this, and so they're not able to pick up the phone. But then all of a sudden, if you continue your efforts, all of a sudden it's, oh, now I can answer the phone. And you're increasing the odds of you getting to be on the phone with them. That's not what you think about when you think about your marketing, right? Like but those things, and that's an extreme example, right? Like that they do, but man, even like you said, adding 10 touch points through this process, and it probably take you a little bit of time to build it, and it'll take you some time to execute on it. You'll probably have to make some tweaks to it along the way, but you're better. You become so much different than the next person that calls, or that the next company that they call.
Well, and you mentioned, I like the way that you worded this in our previous conversation, Jim. We were talking about buying leads from some lead services and such, and you were saying how the ones who utilize those and do a good job, they're great at turning one into many, or however you
into many.
And this is the same concept.
Yeah.
So we do these small things well, and it'll drive down the cost per lead across the whole marketing campaign, because we'll grab a few more of those people on the eighth touch.
Exactly. You'll grab a few of them on the eighth touch, and then continuing to improve that customer journey. The ones that you do convert into jobs, into sales, they've had such a better experience that they're more likely to remember you and recommend you.
Sure.
I was at dinner last night with a bunch of contractors, and we were talking about it, and people don't remember who did their roof. They don't remember what shingle they got. Like in the moment, they remember they were very in tune with signing that, getting that OC Platinum Preferred, whatever, or that GAF, Gold Pledge warrant, right? They knew it. They had a feeling about that in the moment of why and when they were sold on that. But a year from now, ask them what shingle's on their roof.
Oh yeah. No chance.
No chance, right? And ask them who put their roof on. Very few people will even remember the contractor. But if you create this experience, a few more people will remember you. And if only a few more people remember you, a few more referrals come in, and a few more, it's a snowball, right? Yeah. Like it's a snowball. And that's what the best of class contractors do. And that it's amazing.
Yeah.
What do you think the greatest insight is that you could share with our audience that's really helped you find success with Pelican?
A couple things come to mind, Jim. It circles back to our earlier conversation around self-development. I think it just feeds right in, expanding the mind. And I find so often myself and those I observe around me have such low ceilings. We have such low ceilings. And I continue to find new ones and be amazed at how that was still a ceiling for me. Environment. We've got 5 pillars of Pelican. The first one is called protect. And it's about protecting our environment. And what that means for us is the people around us, as well as our inner talk and that self-talk. but putting the right people around you. My real estate mentor, who's probably been the most influential person in my life, business related, Cody Sperber, he's the clever investor out in Phoenix, Arizona. I went to one of his events in 2014. By that time, he's a millionaire. He's got his Lamborghini, and he's my age, which at the time was, I don't know, 35 or something. And I was like, Cody, how'd you do this so quick and get to this point? And his answer was, I just put smarter people than me around me. Mm. And as I made my way through last year of a very busy early part of the year and plenty of roof jobs, 100 something roof jobs a month we're doing. And then the vacuum effect occurs and my costs are too high and I'm hanging on and trying to figure it out. It was a very difficult time for me personally, professionally. How is this thing going to operate? A lot of uncertainty. And I spent some time with some people at the end of the year, and one of my good friends told me, he's like, dude, you just got to get some real smart people around you. That's it. And so it shifted the way that I was looking for my new sales manager. And I've already noticed in a month's time after bringing this person on that's got a decade of experience managing large sales teams, it's like that moment we talked about with my previous sales manager that fueled the growth then. The same thing is about to happen. I can see it, I can read it, smell it, and it's right there in front of me. So placing the right people in terms of mentors or employees, whether it's loyalty in the employee, but also the knowledge. If someone's interested in growing to another level, to me, the quickest and easiest path is finding someone that's there already and expediting the process by just getting around them in any way that we can. And so those would be my two.
Awesome, man. Thanks for your time today. This has been another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. If you would like to generate more revenue for your digital marketing efforts, please visit roofermarketers.com to get a copy of the book, The Best Known Roofer. Also, check the training section of the website for guides on everything from running effective pay-per-click ads to how to properly set up your Google My Business listing. Thanks for listening.